Good evening, everybody. So, we've gone through our 5 stages now. This is Prospector Jess from Hunting for Gold, sourdoughminer.com. Check us out. So right now we're looking at the 5 stages of gold prospecting, a systematic process to find more gold. After all, we're here to say, how may we help you find more gold? That's our motto here at Hunting for Gold. So what we're looking at is stage 5. In stage 5, we're basically closing the system, the loop, in deciding whether to mine for gold or move on, go on to the next portion of our claim or to the next claim, depending upon what we find. And then we make that decision in this step. So I'm going to be real brief on what we're covering here. It's a little more complicated because there might be some math involved, things like that. But the reality is it's all the same. You're deciding whether or not you're going to stick it out and continue to punch through and recover gold, or whether you've decided there's not enough gold here or the recovery process is too expensive to continue. So what do we do? What's a miner to do? So I wanted to kind of quickly touch bases on our systematic processing. You can see the link below, sourdoughminer.com, systematic. That's where you find the current offer. And what we're offering in that is 10 DVDs that describe in detail the 5 stages we've talked about, describe each of those different processes briefly, and then go over a set of manuals that are in PDF form, so they're instant access downloadable manuals. There's a whole set of those to go along with the 5 stages and more. And so that covers kind of how can I find gold and how do I mine it and make that, decision that I have to make at stage 5 as to whether or not I'm going to scale this thing up, or whether I'm going to just continue as it is, or whether I'm going to move on to something else because this isn't going to work. Fish or cut bait. So let's take a look, make sure we're showing up. Refresh the monitor here and check we're live, and we've got 8 people on. So we're just starting out tonight with stage 5. As I mentioned. In stage 5, again, going back to the first page, we're looking at our miner move on step. So this is where we're going to make our decision about whether we stick around or whether we scram and go to the next location. Because remember, in these 5 stages, that is, we're right here. You are here in stage 5, circled in red. Specifically, you are here looking to amplify on this red pointer here. And that is, our goal is to find gold or platinum or diamonds. But whatever it is, we want to find a value out of this site that we've discovered along the steps going stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're in 5. So you are here in 5, but we've learned a lot of things already about our claim. We've got our site figured out. We know we dialed in where the gold is and where it's not. And now we're making decisions about whether or not to continue. Is it worth it? Am I going to scale up? Am I going to bring people in with diesel equipment and so forth, high bankers, dredges, etc., depending upon the rules and regulations, what you can do, including some things that people would say you can't do, but obviously the big mining companies get to do with it. So if you have a claim and it has a lot of values, and you can't necessarily get the the rights to do certain things, but other groups can, it can still be of extreme value. Because remember, anytime you have a claim, you have a privilege or a right of ownership of the property value that's buried inside of that claim. A claim is property, and so what happens here is that's extremely valuable. Now, if it's not your claim, the claim owner has that, but you might be able to negotiate some mining process where you share, and that's, you see that done all the time. So the question becomes in Miner Move On, what is a miner to do? What kind of things can you do with the amount of gold you're finding? But the first thing we've got to do is establish just about how much per effort we're finding, and whether that effort or dollar at cost of the mining is over or above the value of the actual gold being able to recover. Because if it's over, then you're not profitable. You're actually negative profit. It's costing you. So, but once you start making more in gold on average, or you have the potential from the samples you took, then we've got an interesting proposition. Because now I start scaling up potentially, or I start looking for somebody to buy my claim. These are all possibilities. Sky's the limit there. That's your ultimate goal, but that isn't what a lot of people do with mining. They're just in it to look for the gold, and that's great. But wouldn't it be smart to be prepared? Wouldn't it be wise, even if you're just doing this for recreational purposes, to get an idea of how much time and effort it's worth on this site versus maybe another site you have access to, another claim, another location? Somehow you got to make a decision whether you mine or move on, regardless of whether or not you have financial or recreational interest. And that's just how it is. So let's take a look at how you guys are responding right now. I just want to make sure everything's going okay. Got 3 comments in so far. We have a few more members online. Hey, Charles is on. Good. Sounds good. And Bob says the sound is good. Everybody's doing fine. Marian is on from South Carolina. Great. And Harold Gaynor is from Little Rock, Arkansas, is in the house. Awesome. And so this is great. So I will continue now that I know you guys are good and I'm good. See the green stuff there? That says good. It says Charles is watching with you. So the idea now is, okay, in this last stage, this is really where the whole thing comes to focus. And so what we want to do is make sure that as we move toward this, that we don't jump the gun, you know, and buy a bunch of really expensive equipment like this right here and plant it on a site that doesn't really warrant having this and find ourselves going, you know, belly up because we didn't do that. You know, so the question is, what kind of equipment does the site warrant? What kind of equipment and what effort does it take to get the equipment in? Do I have to helicopter it in? You know, etc. Do I have to take it in by hand, pack mule, you know, that kind of stuff. So all of these come down to what you do in stage 5, because stage 5 now we're basically deciding whether or not we have a site that's worthy of exploiting, and whether or not we are going to spend the time, money, effort to do all that, and that's pen and paper time. And so one of the things we want to make sure we look at when we go there is, you know, what does this all entail? So let me kind of go back over what we've been doing. So we started out with our whole thing where in stage 1 we kind of looked at, you know, what's possible, and we looked at all of our claims and locations throughout our interests, for that matter, throughout the world. And we decided on a subset of those to focus on. So we funneled this whole thing down to a smaller, if you will, sluice box. Okay, and in that sluice box we started on our stage 2 effort, which is essentially, actually stage 2 is right in here. Stage 1's kind of coming in here all over the place. These are all of the research topics we covered, right? Remember that? And then stage 2 we kind of said, okay, in there, which things basically have, if I picked a claim out of this whole thing, in this claim, which areas am I going to focus on and narrow down to, I'm not getting this right, and narrow down to, let's neck this down a bit more, to just spend my effort on. So that's where I'm going to be, the subsections of my claim, if you will, which we said are site survey results. And then in 3, we sample. Now in the sampling process, we're going to kind of distill out a handful of location samples, and of those we're hoping to find one or two that looks really significant enough to do the process of doing our whole stage 4 pay streak location. We found where the thing cuts through and we planned it. So here we are in stage 5, so this is 4. Okay, and out of 4 we got our stage 5, which says, okay, now how can I scale this up? Is it worth the money? And does it have the right characteristics to be worth the time? This is a lousy clock. This is kind of a drunk clock. Okay, stop that. But you get the idea, is that, you know, you're going to spend either time or money or both, and you want to basically be able to come out of this with your gold bricks. So the idea is, you know, out of this whole process will come my refined or nuggets or samples or specimens or whatever I'm hunting, and it will be worth that time and effort once I'm done. That's the whole question, which can be measured in units of fun. If you're just doing it for recreation, did I find enough vials? Did I get enough gold for the hours that I spent? Was my weekend fun and I feel like I'm a winner? It doesn't matter whether you're looking for large scale or small scale. The principle here is the same, and that is, am I getting results that I wanted to, or do I need to go back in here? Let me modify this color a little bit. Should I go back in here and start looking at, well, you know, we have some other places that were interesting up here in stage 2, okay? And let's pick off another claim, not claim, but another subsection of our claim that we can go to and perform 3 all over again, okay? And that's the whole idea here. We can repeat these sections as needed to get a better result without necessarily even having to leave the claim. All we've done is isolate where we're focusing our effort. We're not going all over the place. We're focusing our effort as we go through stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we have to go back to 1 or go back to 2, 3, 4, we can. Now, hopefully, if we've done a pretty thorough job in 1, we won't be going very much back to that step. Or even 2, if we've done a pretty thorough job of looking and surveying our site initially. Never hurts to go back and look again, though. It might be that we step back and we say, we've learned a few new things about what we learned initially, or thought initially about stage 2. When we actually started panning out or delivering our samples that we were measuring, we started finding other minerals that might be worthy. We found some tellurides. We found some rare earths. This site might not be so good for gold, but it might be really good for rare earth metals, and therefore the gold brick we're pulling out, at this end is not what we thought originally. It's something else entirely. Happens all the time. Remember, gold is associated with a bunch of other really valuable minerals. Don't lose sight of that ever. Because what you're going to want to do is capitalize on what you can deliver from your site, not necessarily what you thought you could. Each stage is kind of a hypothesis. We're thinking here, we're saying, okay, my guess is this site looks interesting from its history, it has potential, and then what you're doing is trying to prove or validate your hypotheses with each stage of testing and retesting. That's why this thing's a methodical, systematic process. You're just simply putting it into an order that you can revise as you learn. You're using your head, you're using your partners and their input, what they're finding, in a coordinated manner to basically win the game of finding gold or finding platinum or silver or zinc, for that matter. Or titanium or uranium. That you never know what might be associated with your particular site that you didn't notice was a hint maybe in some of the subclaim information when you did your site research. But the honest truth is, some of these things are so rare that they only show up in a very small portion of a given claim. There's a band of or a lens of this material, and it has some tellurides in it, but it's extremely rich, so it's extremely valuable because there's all these neodymium magnets and fancy solar-powered cars and battery charger setups that are all the rage. Every single one of those guys eats minerals from from mines, not gold mines, from mines for a living. And so you're just going to find a way to make do with that. So just remember that you're not just in it for the gold, but the gold is obviously a really attractive thing, and it's more understood by the rest of the world. But if I found a rare earth mine right now, I'd be happy. I'd be real happy. So that's the objective, is that you want to just keep your eyes open and watch for what you're learning and learn it. And so again, going back to our kind of looking at what we're doing, if I were in this claim and I were looking, which I was, you can see, and I am looking back at what I've found and what I've recovered from my sampling holes. I'm now looking down into the further reaches of where I've been working, deciding for the next sample hole based on my current plan. And is that time to move, or is that time to we're going to pick this up again tomorrow and go deeper? Mine or move on? That's the decision in stage 5 of the 5 stages of gold mining. Systematic gold mining. SourdoughMiner.com, systematic. Look it up. Watch the little video. Just describes the details and what the offer is. You can take it or not, but the pricing, the advantage pricing goes away tonight at midnight. And that's coming up in a couple hours here, so I would take advantage of it as soon as you can. So for now, I just wanted to see if there's any questions you guys have. We're ready for that. Let's take a look. Let's see. So Paul says Oklahoma is back. Great, Paul. Good to see you. And we got Marion. He says, I can't go any further with the course until I get a laptop. Okay, so Marion's going to need a laptop. He's working on getting squared away and trying to figure out how he's going to do that. So the DVDs may or may not need a laptop. You know, they should play in any player, including your television, whatever. The other material will need a laptop for downloading, but you can download it and then print it at Kinko's, or I don't know what Kinko's. Kinko's doesn't exist, my son tells me. Blockbuster doesn't exist. You know, gee, nothing exists anymore. Well, let's see, what does exist? Amazon, that exists. Okay, so stop that. Anyway, Amazon Prime, no less. So you can, you know, we can talk about how to download these or what to work out. It's an interesting point. Now, Dean Reinglass says, TV time with wifey again. I'm doing another flyby. Hello, sir. Have a great night. I'll see you later. That's funny. Replay. It's your friend. You can play it late at night on your phone. So Jeff Sinku says, do you know of any gold or rare earth deposits around the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area? That's a good question. Rare earth deposits. I haven't done one on that, and I haven't done Pennsylvania yet. So maybe I'll pick that up when I do Pennsylvania, and we'll look around. The thing about rare earths that's kind of interesting, like platinum, and here's something to learn about the USGS MRDS as a resource. Take everything you get, whether it's coming from that or word of mouth, with a grain of salt when it comes to rare or valuable minerals. Because typically people don't tell you where things are for fear of losing them. And the problem with rare earth and that kind of material is that it wasn't really tracked that well until really pretty late in the game, you know, somewhat 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, kind of thing. And even then, they skipped over it until this huge boom in technology. The thing that is driving it more than anything else is in my hand right here, cell phones. This thing is chock full of rare earth components. And so one of the things that drives you nuts is, okay, how do you have all these activists who don't want to go mining talking and sending pictures on their cell phones? It's pretty ludicrous and pretty hypocritical, if you ask me. But it's also ignorance. So the thing that you have to recognize is, you know, how do they get these colors to glow? Rare earths. How do they get the magnets to beep and chime? Rare earths. How do they get the batteries to function the way they do and last as long as they do? Rare earths, lithium, molybdenum, cobalt. You see what happens here. How do they get the capacitors that are inside of these things to be as tiny as they are and hold as much energy as they do? Look up a thing called coltan, cobalt tantalum. It's a metal that has a property when it comes to electronics. That's my background from another life. That gives it some really interesting energy holding capability in a very, very small size, like a phone. Okay, you would not be able to put anywhere near the capacity and capability that this phone has in it if it weren't for those mined metals, gold doped connectors, and all kinds of doped, you know, rare earth doped semiconductors built inside that have all kinds of behaviors that allow it to work fast and do multiple functions in both analog and digital. And I could go on and on and on, but that's really the truth of it. And so sure, we'll look and see if Pittsburgh area when we do Pennsylvania, but for that matter, maybe a couple of other states, just for fun. I think that would be a fun thing. But one of the things you have to recognize is that rare earths may not show up as readily in the USGS MRDS because it's a fairly recent phenomena that we've been going in to look. what you need to recognize is most gold prospects have the potential, that is, old gold mines have the potential for producing rare earths. Now they're going in and finding that a lot of the mining tailings piles, huge ones, are loaded with rare earths in some places. And so they're actually remining the tailings. Go figure. Because they threw it out. It wasn't valuable. It is now. It's more valuable from a functional point of view than gold. And when we get to the point where people demand having all these solar-powered cars and solar-powered everything else, which use a lot more than these do, we're going to get into a crisis soon. So, and it's one of the problems with the whole, we're going to go with this complete green economy. You're going to kill the economy if you go completely green, because there isn't enough of this material around, and you don't want to mine anymore. So you got a problem, folks. Got to figure out what you want to do. Better off to let the economy take care of itself. That's why I'm a real capitalist, because it will balance out if you move in slowly enough, and gradually people will invent ways to solve some of these problems, like using more effective use of rare earths. But if you just demand that we go there now because it's politically expedient, danger. That's when problems happen. You start doing, you create piles and piles of rubbish and waste huge amounts of energy and poison waters and things like that because you're in a rush. You're not letting the thing work its way out and find the safest and most valuable route through the conundrum of how do I balance the utility and function and the benefit of something like a high technology against the need to do, mining and mineral and this whole thing over here called, dredging, etc., right? If you don't want to dredge, then you don't want to recover some of those minerals. Now, dredging is not the only way to recover minerals, but it's one of them. They certainly don't like open pit mines, even more than they don't like dredging. How do I know that? Because I do. There's an area that had an open pit mine, and the story is how, rocks would fly through the kitchen window and things like that from time to time. It's serious, but, it was goof. It was stupid. Somebody blew it, literally. So this is kind of what you want to be watching for, is how do I go about, recovering minerals and materials in an efficient way, and how do I get that to work? So that was a good question. I went off on a tangent. Sorry about that. You guys, you're to blame for this. You're to blame for me. Do you know any gold or rare earth deposits? Okay, so we did that. And Art Sherwood, Dean Reinglass says smiley face, and Art Sherwood says, hey Jess, out of Maryland. So I think we've covered everybody for tonight. I hope we've got what we came for. Is there any other questions you have with regard to this picture of any of the 5 stages and what we're talking about there, and how those 10 DVDs and the source material fit against that? Because that's kind of what we're talking about tonight. I just wanted, if you have any questions, stuff I can answer for you to help you make a decision, now's the time. It's a good time. The one thing that I wanted to make sure you're aware of is that as you go through these stages, initially it seems overwhelming. That's not unusual, but in reality, you're probably over focusing. You just want to do it as simply as I've drawn here on the chart. Just learn what the stages are and what you're looking for, what the key pointers and bullets are for each of those stages. So if I'm researching the regions, what's a good way to start? MRDS. What else is a good way to start? Research on Google. What else is a good way to start? Talk to people who have claims in the area, clubs that are in the area, things like that. So these just kind of are a few ideas about what you would do, and all you're trying to do is catalog those into a folder or onto some paper, so that you can sit down and map out what your plan is. In other words, make a plan and do it as simply or as complex as you want. I tend to do it more simple, because I can get really complicated, and that just really drags everything out, takes the fun out. That's not what you want to do here. You want to keep the fun in, but just remember to go through these stages one at a time, so that you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, and then stage 5, like we talked about today, mine or move on. Am I ready to mine, or am I going to go from here back to stage 2 and take some more samples? Okay, that's it. Simplistically, You know, you just have a framework that you can think about looking at a gold site and say, I now know how to handle this. I'm not overwhelmed by what I see. Because one of the things that I've run into with people is they tend to get overwhelmed with the whole idea of gold prospecting. And the answer is no, it's fun. Even if you're going to work at it, it's fun. You just have to kind of break it down into chunks that are, you know, this is what I'm about right now, and I'm not going to worry about that. I'll put it on my map, you know, danger, there's a, you know, open pit, you know, that kind of thing. But I'm going to not worry about that today. I'll worry about that when I get over that area, or I'll fence it off or something, right? And what will it cost to do that? I can start factoring those things in. But the fact of the matter is, you're just simply putting all this into a five-stage framework. That's all I'm doing here. Okay. And I think that's it for tonight. I wish you good prospecting and good night. Don't forget this thing below. So systematic, sourdough miner. This closes at midnight tonight. So check in. I've had a few people ask me some questions. Send me a message via Messenger on Facebook, or send me a request contact at hunting4gold.com and ask your questions about anything we're talking about here. It's open season. If you got a question about this product, you know, send me a question. If you got a question about, you know, pay or anything like that, you know, or access, you know, we're open. Just let me know and I'll be glad to serve you. We have money back guarantee on this stuff and all that good stuff, so you shouldn't have to worry about any of that stuff, and we'll take care of you, no problem. So that's it for tonight. Good prospecting. Prospector Jess over and out. Good to see everybody. All right.